to the DC New 52 review. I want to thank you for tuning into another episode. I am your host, Paulie DC, and let's get right into this thing. Today's episode, we will discuss Action Comics Volume 1. It was titled Superman and the Men of Steel, and it was written by Grant Morrison with art by Rags Morales and Andy Kubert, and the first 8 issues were released between November 2011 to June of 2012. As for anything I have to say before we actually get into the review, I'm gonna say this once now and only once. Superman went through some of the biggest, debatably the biggest changes in the DC New 52. There, I said it, it's done. Now, Action Comics Volume 1 to 3, or Morrison's run, covered the early years of him, going all the way back to retelling his entire origin and the ensuing advancements of his transition into the Big Blue Boy Scout. His original origin facts vary in this book and continue on throughout the entire New 52. Another something I'll say real quick is with Grant Morrison's writing, you have to have your eyes and mind sharp as you know what. And this series warrants multiple reads to fully grasp everything. Issue number 1 starts 6 years in the past and drops us right into the middle of a already in motion story involving Superman storming the penthouse of a dirty business mogul, Glenn Morgan. Yes, that's really his name. And getting him to admit his wrongdoings with a tactic that could easily kill a guy that age, but okay. And I will also quickly mention that Glenn Morgan was dealing with a little sleazy looking guy who we will be seeing much more of. The cops try to stop Superman, and here it's made very clear that this series is not in the present due to the officers opening fire on him. He can't fly and is only wearing his House of L cape with a t-shirt and jeans. Lex Luthor is seen with General Sam Lane stating that Superman made his first appearance 6 months ago in Metropolis, where he's based, and Sam's daughter Lois Lane came up with the Superman moniker, which was actually given to him by his father Jonathan originally. Lex begins a ploy to capture Superman by blitzing him with tanks and helicopters, only to get thwarted by a wardrobe change. It's been working for 70 years. Why would it stop now? Now that he's looking like a white Steve Urkel, Clark meets up with his landlord, Miss Miss N, speaking briefly about Enter Gang. A younger Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen are then cut to as they trail a guy named Gus Grundig onto a train and are telling Clark about it, while the little sleazy guy Glenn Morgan dealt with mentions a railroad bomb because Grundig is an ex-enforcer of his. So as Superman, he goes to help but ends up having to take on the train face first, while Guns Grundig is subdued by the citizens. And even though Superman stops major damage and lost lives, he's left unconscious, which was all planned by Lex to really capture him on General Lane's behalf, due to both men having serious resentment toward him since his reveal. Lex's seems a little stronger. Actually, way stronger. Did the ending to that first issue get a bit weird and a little confusing? Well, with Grant Morrison, we're far from done. Issue number 2 begins with Lex testing Superman's pain thresholds along with his cape's resilience. And the little sleazy guy that we've seen in the past is now a doctor in whatever facility they're in. See what I mean by keeping your eyes open? The character John Henry Irons is present as well as a scientist, but he leaves due to everything happening being extremely heinous. General Lane is involved too, and Lois shows up so we can get a glimpse of a fully human John Corbin. Superman then decides to just get up and escape, which begs the question of why he even stuck around at all. Oh, right, of course. So Lex's arrogance and hubris could be shown, and Krypton could be mentioned for the first time. As Soups makes his exit, he recovers his cape, severely pisses off Lex, and then discovers they have his very special Kryptonian rocket ship there that brought him to Earth, but can't take it with him yet. He fights through a bunch of soldiers next, briefly bumps into Lois, and all of this ushers in John's choice to become Metallo when a special armor suit is uncovered. Lex is then seen speaking to something in a friggin' spaceship regarding the Krypton Superman connection. Speaking of Krypton, issue number 3 takes us there in a blast way into the past with some gorgeous art featuring the planet's final hour. Baby Kal-El is with his mother Lara and grandmother Zora, while his dad Jor-El and dog Krypto are the first to discover a Professor Vanda has led an alien consciousness into Krypton's network as it begins to expire and gets invaded by the said alien, forcing Zora to sacrifice herself to save Lara and Cal. I always thought this fate of Krypton would make a great animated short series. This was all actually a dream, and Clark is awoken by police and an Inspector Blake, who seems to dislike him and Superman, which is kind of funny. Here it's said how Clark works for the Daily Star, and after the cops leave from searching his apartment, Miss Miss Nixley shows she's aware that he's from space. He later goes off to meet up with Jimmy, and the two find out that Glenn Morgan is free because of the things he admitted were not volitional, and Lois joins them to insult Clark. Later that night, Clark is then seen talking to someone called Icarus, which is where he's been getting recent reporting intel, but after some bad public news broadcasts and citizen outcry to go away, he appears to drop the Superman mantle. Even later that night, at the Factory for Tomorrow, Clark, Lois, and Jimmy are there as the machines begin to morph into what they call themselves Terminauts. Unfortunately, their invasion on behalf of someone called the Collector of Worlds is right in sync with John Corbin putting on Steel Soldier Metal Zero suit, which fuses to him Spider-Man 2 Doc Ock style, and voila, Metallo. Lex tries to reason with the Collector of Worlds and is told it wants Superman. Issue number 4 has Lex hauling ass and the Terminauts beginning their planetary destruction, which John Henry Irons sees reports on, so he unveils his special supersuit he's been developing, and voila, we get Steel. You know, the character Shaq played in the classic 1997 movie of the same name. We all remember it, right? Well, maybe it's best that we shouldn't. Superman ends up coming out of his 10-minute retirement. Why even include that if it literally lasted 3 pages? I don't know and I don't care. But now that he's back, he does battle with the Terminauts while Lois and Jimmy try to navigate the streets but are found by Metallo, who tries to kill them both. Soups does show up on time to help, spurring a big fight between the two that conveniently crosses Lex's path. And here we see the Collector of Worlds was the one he spoke to at the end of issue 2, and not surprisingly, tried to make a deal with. Idiot. Steel hits the scene to help Superman fight Metallo, but midway it's realized part of Metropolis has become the latest addition to the Collector of Worlds' collection, with Lex, Lois, Jimmy, and Glenn Morgan being a part of it. Issue number 5 kicks off with Steel and General Lane helping Superman sort of attempt his first flight. He literally runs out of his shoes and launches himself into space to go after the Collector of Worlds' spaceship, but since this young Superman seems pretty inept, didn't seem to account for defense systems, and gets half-assed captured since he breaks free immediately, takes down some Terminauts, then discovers part of the Collector's acquired pieces, which include a section of Krypton and clothing from the planet. Inside the piece of Metropolis that was taken, Lois is the first to point the finger at Lex, with him mentioning Ray Palmer, since why not? He's a known character to change mass, and after entering a bar where Glenn Morgan, Inspector Blake, and the little sleazy guy, now a bartender, are, they realize they've all been shrunk in mass and encapsulated. Superman tries to speak to the Collector of Worlds, finding out its many aliases, including Brainiac, and here he discovers his Kryptonian roots for the first time, and then is presented an opportunity to either save the piece of Metropolis or Kandor of Krypton. His decision is made when he sees his rocket ship reach out to him from the Metropolis capsule, so he steals some clothing that's on display which meshes with his House of L cape, donning him the red and blue costume we all know. Issue number 6 picks up inside the Metropolis capsule as Glenn Morgan is going insane, and Lex finds out everyone inside is heading for a forced stasis due to still having connections to the Collector of Worlds, who is now doing battle with Superman and getting support from Metallo because he randomly showed up in the last page of the previous issue. They don't scrap for long though, because after Superman gets new clothes for some reason, he realizes the collection around him is very important to his foe and uses that to his advantage. Superman's plan next involves slyly grabbing his rocket ship because it's tiny now, and antagonizing the Collector of Worlds, who goes full Hydra, only to get the mini rocket ship flicked into one of those faces due to it having an invulnerable crystal computer inside of it that defends itself, crystallizing the Collector of Worlds with seconds to spare for Superman to save the piece of Metropolis. Back down on Earth, Steel is now looked at as a hero. A bit of Clark's life at the Daily Star with his editor Mr. Taylor is seen. Metallo is in a coma under General Lane's watch, and the secret Icarus person that Clark's been talking to was Luthor. Plus, there's a chat scene with Clark and Miss N discussing how she knows he's an alien. Much more to come from her in volumes 2 and 3. The last couple pages here are epilogue of Superman explaining his Kryptonian roots, new costume, and intentions on Earth to the public at a big thank you rally for him. Then he flies off in a phenomenal close-up drawing to visit his parents' graves, which is something that will be explained more soon. And after that, it's off to his new base, the Collector of Worlds' abandoned ship. Oh, almost forgot. The little sleazy guy is now with a hunter named Mr. Zarov, killing a T-Rex on Dinosaur Island and challenging him to hunt Superman next. Alrighty then. Issue number 7 is the beginning of a new storyline with more flashes to baby Kal-El's last minutes on Krypton. Jor-El wants to escape to the other dimensional prison of the Phantom Zone, which I feel is a fate worse than death, but the prisoners inside almost get out when he opens a portal inside of it, causing Krypto to jump inside and save them. With that plan now gone, Kal is put onto his rocket ship and sent away, where it's also said his destination wasn't supposed to be random. Once arrived on Earth, it's shown how the Kents found baby Kal-El, but couldn't take his rocket ship, leaving it for the US government to find. And if you haven't noticed yet, the ship talks, speaking kind of like a kooky recluse professor to me. It's also the focal point for the next little bit as a group of unseen villains, later called the Anti-Superman Army, steal its kryptonite engine, because we're about to get into some time travel. Yay. Lots of details of events to come are referenced by some of these villains, who are called Drekken, K-Man Green, and they also seem to have an unknown benefactor. So, this calls for Superman to be joined by the Legion of Superheroes members, Cosmic Man, Saturn Woman, and Lightning Lad. Alright, issue number 8. We've made it. Things get going with the anti-Superman army being seen up close, and their leader is the little sleazy guy. Dun dun dun. Some of them here, like the K-Men Blue, Green, and Red, are given names, even though one's female, and others here, not so much. Things cut to Superman speaking to the three Legionnaires about the past and the future occurrences, which I'm not even going to get into. Let's face it, time travel plots are tricky as hell. Terminator, Time Cop, Back to the Future, no matter how well written, there's always discrepancies. I'll just mention that something called Tesseract space is mentioned, since that's important in other spots of the New 52. Superman and the others suddenly get attacked by the shapeshifter Drekken, who, when beaten down, turns out to be a stereotypical Area 51 looking alien called Eric, who tries to go round 2 with the same result, this time revealing intel to Saturn Woman that Mr. Zarov, now called Nimrod the Hunter, shot a microscopic bit of kryptonite into Superman's brain. So she pries in there, since that's one of her abilities, leading into a flashback of Clark bull wrestling on the farm with Pa Kent. Then a time travel bubble is prepped so the three can visit Clark in this memory to give him a flight ring that the Legionnaires use before going to the future meeting of the anti-Superman army, disguised as one's called the Sisterhood of Abiding Hate, but they're caught by the little sleazy guy, which kickstarts a fight we don't even see, and this starts with the kryptonite key heart shattering, and I have hardly any clue what the hell is going on. Meanwhile, Superman is dying of krypton poisoning, and Drekken gets ready for round 3, trying to suffocate him, but his rocket ship protects him, just as the trio of Legionnaires return, just in time to help. Lightning Lad is missing a damn arm, but still helps load Superman into the time bubble so he can heal in the present, which coincides with the first time he met the three, and I still have hardly any flippin' idea what just happened. There were some backup stories in this volume, so I'm just going to quickly skim through them. Half are of what Steel got up to during the Collector of Worlds' attack, with exquisite art from Brad Walker. He had a vicious battle with Metallo, showing his well-tuned fighting metal. Oh geez, alright, I can't help it sometimes, I'm sorry. But Metallo was then teleported away, which explains how he ended up with the Collector of Worlds at the end of issue number 5. Steel also has to stop a bridge collapse and capsizing tourist boat using his science skills for this part. The other half of stories involve Jonathan and Martha Kent before Clark and how they couldn't have children normally. And then there's some memories Clark has of him having dinner with his parents and of some childhood memories. And this is all as he leaves the farm to a Mr. Fry and is escorted to the train station by longtime friend Pete Ross and lover Lana Lang. Oh boy, where to start with these final thoughts? Grant Morrison, I suppose, is good. And as I wrote this script, there were some trending social media shenanigans going on for... Did you really think I was going to discuss that? I just wanted to mention it, that I announced this book's review before all that was going on, and this was mere coincidence. So, on to more important things. Grant has been a comic world staple for a long time, Eisner and Harvey Award winner, created and co-created a slew of characters from Damian Wayne, The Great Ten, Kate Kane as in Batwoman, Zoriel, Father Time, and lots more. Even received a Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. Some of Morrison's writing to me, most of it, just gives off the vibes of sitting at a desk and whatever weird zany idea from knowledge learned pops into mind, gets written into the story some type of way. Take a look at the notes in the back of this book if you don't believe me. Rags Morales has been providing art for DC for over 20 years, and it's really well conceived here. You can really tell he likes his close-up face shots. Not many other characters get much page time though. Glenn Morgan is a goner after this volume, and the energy drink crazed Lex Luthor, who looks to be in his late 20s, early 30s here, Reminds me of Michael Rosenbaum's version of him from Smallville. Already very smart and cocky, but not quite there yet. General Sam Lane is still the same miserable guy, while Jimmy and Lois are around to mainly just get certain stuff moving and providing backstory and history info. Obviously, this version of Metallo and sort of Brainiac are different, but we'll be seeing more of them, and of course, they've become good first inductees to Supes' New 52 Rogues Gallery, and they contributed well to this volume's plot. Miss Nixley and the Anti-Superman Army can be discussed in another review, because if you thought Volume 1 was a lot to take in, wait until 2 and 3. So with that, I think I'll wrap this up, and to anyone still watching, I want to thank you for watching until the end, and to please like, share, and subscribe. Please follow me on all my social media platforms, and to join me next time for Nightwing Volume 1.